Welcome to my screencast. This is starting a new project with Azure DevOps. I'm Jake Watkins. I'm a senior architect with Hitachi Consulting's digital platforms practice. So why am I doing this screencast? Well, I'm often the first person to arrive at a client when starting a new project, and so I have to get everything prepared for the rest of the team who are going to come on and perform the actual delivery for this client. And it's important to get everything set up correctly ahead of time so that when the team comes in and they start setting up their workstations to do the work, things go smoothly and we don't have any issues. Who cares? I mean, we're just talking about setting up a project, right? I mean, so what? Go into Visual Studio, new project, and so on. Well, it actually is important. First, it makes sharing your projects easier. If you get everything set up correctly to begin with, when the new guy comes in and pulls down the project, they're able to immediately build it. And that's something that I think is very important. Whenever I go to a repo and I pull down a project, if I hit Control-Shift-B or hit the F5 button or the play button in Visual Studio, I want the project to immediately compile and be able to come up and run. If there's some additional steps that I need to do, that's okay, but in general, I want as close as possible to just being able to press F5, nothing else. Next, having the project set up correctly, it's going to save you time because that new person coming onto your project, they pull it down and it doesn't work right or things are wonky. They're going to ask a lot of questions, either interrupting you or other people on the team so that they get set up. So get it right, and you save the time of everybody on the team, including the new person. So what are we going to do? Well, I'm going to first start off in Visual Studio on my local machine, and I'm going to set up the solution. I have a particular way I like to do it, and just to be clear, the way I do it doesn't necessarily mean you have to do it exactly the same way. You may have your own preferences, and that's fine. Just figure out what those preferences are and do that. Otherwise, if you do it different every time, it's not good. Figure out what works and do that, and then improve upon it as you learn new things and as the technology changes. After I've got my local project set up, I'm going to go to Azure DevOps, which, seriously, Microsoft, stop renaming stuff every quarter. I mean, really? Azure DevOps. Woohoo! So anyway, we're going to go into Azure DevOps, VSTS, and we're going to create our project. And then we're going to do our initial commit. So I use I use Git repositories. We could do this on GitHub. In this case, I'm using Azure DevOps, VSTS, to store my source code and do the branching and everything else. You can do it other ways, but in this case, that's what we're doing. So, let's do it. All right, here we are in my workstation. So I've already got PowerShell and a file explorer started up. Some of the work we're going to do, I do from the command line, but we're going to fire up Visual Studio. Okay, so new project, and I scroll down to the bottom under Other Project Types, and there's Visual Studio Solutions. So we're going to call this GP Training, and just because this is just a demo, I'm going to put it in my trash code folder. I use trash code as a place for this type of project. It's a place where I experiment. I'll pull down other people's code just to play around with it and see what's going on and learn things. So I collect a bunch of stuff there. So click OK, and Visual Studio works its magic and gives me, an empty project. So we right click and we go Add, New Project, and I'm going to pretend that we were starting up just a normal web project, doing some web development for a client. We'll just call this Training Web, and in the wizard, I'm going to select Angular, click OK. Again, Visual Studio works its magic, blows up the templates for me. And there we go. So I'll go ahead and close this guy. We don't really need it. And just for fun, we'll add another one. We'll call it Training API. Click OK. We'll select the API template instead. Click OK. Again, magic happens, and we click that. All right, I'm happy with this. Looks pretty much the way I want it to. One thing I'm going to do here is I create a folder called Assets. Now, something to keep in mind. This is a solution folder, which only means anything to Visual Studio. It does not represent a file system folder. So, for instance, we drop down to the command line. A lot of the work that I'm going to do from here on is on the command line. We'll jump into GP training. And there's our solution. And notice there is no folder called Assets. So I'm going to create Assets. I'm also going to create a README file in Assets. Boom. So there we go. I like that. I also am going to copy, I keep a gitignore file and a, I can't type, editor config file laying around to add to my solutions. So we'll go in, add existing item, and we'll just select these two, click add. Let's go ahead also add our README. Boom. Let's just put some text in there, GP training. Save it there. All right, done with this. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to close this for now. We'll save. And from here, we're going to type git init. This sets up my local repository and has everything ready to go locally. I then do a git add with an asterisk, and I can make sure that that worked by typing git status. So you can see we've added everything. And I'm going to go ahead and do a git commit -m, and we'll just call this initial commit. Hit that, boom. Again, we can check. Everything's good to go. We're happy. All right. At this point, locally, Git's all set up, and I'm ready to work on my local machine. I could jump on an airplane and code away and store my change sets and have them ready to push to a remote repo when I got back on the ground. So again, I'm happy. So let us now get our project set up so that the rest of the team can enjoy this wonderfulness. So we go to visualstudio.com, and up here, once you have your account set up, you just click on it and then click Visual Studio Profile, and that'll bring you to this. And over here, I already have my organization, Guerrilla Programmer. And I'm going to create a new project. We're going to call it GP Training. Scroll down, click Create, and there we are. So we got our project and have all of the nice things that Microsoft has provided us here. But what we want to do is go to our repo. And again, Microsoft's very nice. Right here, they give us the command ready to go. So I don't have to even memorize this. I highlight it, click or press Control C, And then I go back to PowerShell, hit Control V, and that adds the remote repo to my local repo. So now we can push to the remote sorry, brain fart. So we can push to from my local repo up to the Visual Studio, the VSTS, Azure DevOps repo. Now they also give you this guy, which is nice to have. So we'll go Control C again, switch back, Control V, hit that, and we're pushing everything up. Voila, we're all done. So let's go take a look. We click on Files again, and there it is. So when your team arrives, they can just clone this repo and they're ready to go. They've got everything laid out and they can go to work. But there's a couple of things that I want to do now. We're going to go over here to branches. First thing is, I don't want people able to push to master. Now, I use GitFlow, so we're going to create a couple other branches. One variation on GitFlow that I personally have, and I'm not going to cover GitFlow here. I'll do that in another screencast. But I don't create a develop branch. Master is the develop branch. This is, well, it's not the fastest moving branch. It's like the second fastest. My feature branch is the one that moves the fastest. But what we want to do is we want to create some branch policies. So we click on master, we come here, and I'm going to require that you have at least 2 reviewers, myself and I guess yourself or somebody else. And I also want you to have a work item to associate your change set with. That's good. We save it. And back to branches. I'm going to also create a test branch and a release branch. Okay, and same thing, I want policies on these branches as well. No pushes, you have to do a pull request. There's that. Back to branches, test. Go to the policies, boom, a boom, save. All right. So you can see the little ribbon lets you know just at a glance that you've got your policies set up. All right, this looks good. Again, I'm happy. So back to the command line. And let's test it out real quick. So we're going to open Visual Studio, and now Visual Studio will detect that, hey, we've got our Git repo set up, and it'll even know about the remote for us. What I want to see is, can I push to my master branch? Right now I'm still on master. So you see, text GP training, we're on the master branch. You can click and you can see, well, I haven't talked to any of the remote branches yet, so. All right, let's just make a change to README. Save it. Go over here to Team Explorer, click on Changes, Test Update, and I'm going to say Commit and Push. So it's pushing to master, and you see that it rejected it. And what it's going to say, it tells us that you must do a pull request to update this branch. Perfect. That's exactly what I want. I'm all set up. The only thing I haven't created yet is a feature branch, which again, I'll get into that when I start talking about GitFlow. But this is how I set up my projects. You may want to do it differently. That's entirely up to you, but my recommendation is no matter how you do it, just be consistent about it so that as you learn new things, you have a basis on which to change things. That way, then you're not just all willy-nilly doing stuff different every time and never know whether it's going to be better or not. I know that this setup that I'm using works. I've been doing it this way. Well, previously it was either Subversion or TFS, but now I'm using Git. And honestly, I like Git better than the previous things. I actually think it's a step forward. So that's it. Let's move on. I hope you got a good idea of how to set up your project and have ideas about how you're going to do it differently than I do. And you'll be able to go out and get started. So what we did, we went in to Visual Studio, we set up our project, got things configured the way we like them. And once we were happy with that, then we went into Azure DevOps, VSTS, and connected our local project to our remote repo and did our initial commit so that from then on we could do our work and all of our commits would go up into the cloud. Pretty cool stuff. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this was helpful. If you have questions or comments, please make them and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. You can also reach me on Twitter @JakeW, and have a great day. Thank you.